All right, joining us now. He is literally in his press box in Austin, Texas, fresh off calling Texas's regional win over UCF 9-0 as the Longhorns advance to the Super Regionals, where they'll take on the Clemson Tigers. The voice of Texas softball, Andrew Haynes, joins us once again. We've done it all. You've done now this. You've been appearing on this show from the UCF press box, from your house, and now from the Texas press box. It's long overdue. How is this press box first?
And I'll mention the first time you ever had me on the summer of 2018, I did it from the press box of Lindquist Field in Ogden, Utah,
Oh, that's
where I
right.
was the broadcaster for the Ogden Raptors. Yeah.
Good call. A lot of
Yeah.
different locations.
Different
That
locations.
How would you describe for those that I've never seen it? What is the Texas press box like?
It is in 15 SEC press boxes, probably number 15. It's right now I am in a very tiny booth that's next to the ESPN booth. And I actually only got in this booth last year. It used to house an in-house camera that they would, just show stuff on the scoreboard with the camera person in here. And then they vacated that spot last year, and I was able to sit here. They used it for replay stuff for most of this year, and then they didn't use it for postseason, so I'm back in. But there's an open space of about 15, 20 feet to my left where the Texas and opponents like team tracker people sit and do their stuff, and some newspaper people sit, and then right to my right is the ESPN booth. I have the ESPN talent there, and then there's a wider space to the right of that has the SIDs and the scoreboard operators and all that sort of stuff.
All right. Well, Eric Freed and Madison Shipman, who called the regional, declared that booth is the Cat Osterman booth. That's what they declared. So we'll just call it that for great reasons there. Let's talk about what you saw this weekend here from Texas. Dominant offensively all weekend long. What's your biggest takeaway now from this weekend seeing Texas?
That they completely put the A&M loss out of their minds. There's no other way to say that. They came out swinging. They came out pitching. It looks like a completely different team. They were waiting on good pitches. They were hammering, hittable pitches, and the offense was not missing. Obviously, what was it, 35 runs in 3 games? Pretty impressive. The pitching, very good. Tegan Gavon looked better today than she did yesterday. Yesterday was a couple of blue pits, a couple, a hard hit home run. And then today she scattered 6 hits, 6 different players, all singles, no extra base hits. So I thought Tegan looked really good. A couple other pitchers that pitched on Friday that got into the game yesterday. I think as a whole, this team just feels like they've completely turned a corner from that SEC tournament game, and they're looking like they're very confident right now.
From the outside, they're such a veteran team, a lot of players back from last year. I know it's not the same team, and I know they've had some bumps on the road, but to me, my biggest takeaway, I thought, watching them this weekend, it's almost like some of those players were just happy to, hey, finally, the regionals are here. Let's get going. You know what I mean? Like, did you sense that? Like, they seem to turn a different level. Part of it, too, UCF is a very young team, as we'll get to, but it seemed like they flipped the switch. Is that maybe that's not fair to say, but they definitely turned it up a notch from a level standpoint of play.
Yeah, I think definitely that last stretch of SEC play really wore him down, playing the LSU, Tennessee, Oklahoma stretch. And so being able to, they hammered Kentucky 2 out of 3 games to finish SEC play, but still, that stretch was fresh on their minds. They got into a close game with Ole Miss in the tournament, and then that mess against A&M. Excuse me. I certainly think that being able to play some different opponents, getting rewarded for their work for the full season, getting a top 8 seed, getting to play at home, and getting to see some different opponents, I think definitely freshened everyone up. They didn't have to go, oh boy, here's another SEC series where they do not let up. Like the SEC is just a different beast. And so I think a lot of players were probably had a good mind, and we're just refreshed to be able to get into a different part of the season.
It's a good point you make. The Big 12 is a strong league, but let's be real. There's certain teams, there are weekends where you're like, they're overmatched when you play Texas, right? That's not the case in the SEC. Is that part of the adjustment this year in year one for Texas, one of the learning curves is that it is more of a gauntlet, and that they're going to have peaks and valleys no matter how good you are.
Yeah, I think so. They did sweep the series that they were supposed to sweep, right? They swept Missouri. They swept Auburn. They took 2 of 3 from Mississippi State, lost one game on a walk-off in the first game. Didn't have their best game in that one. And so I think overall they did learn, luckily, pretty quickly that, these teams in the SEC, they are going to bring it day in, day out, and you don't get to let up and still beat a team by 5. Um, and so I don't know exactly what it was with the losing 2 out of 3 to Tennessee, getting swept by Oklahoma. That was just something different. And overall, I think they did learn that the SEC is different. But I think those teams were probably just a step above, and Texas just ran into them at a down point in the season for the Longhorns.
Reese Atwood is locked in. She's something to watch when she's as locked in as she is right now. I think they said 13 RBIs in the regional, the most ever by a Longhorn. Of course, hit 2 home runs in the Sunday regional final. I asked her in the post game which one did she feel she got all of it, and she said that second one, which makes sense. What have you seen from her here this weekend?
Yeah, she has been much more locked in. I think she said in that post game press conference that she was more relaxed, and so she was certainly up there, and she wasn't tight and check swinging at a lot of things, and just starting on pitches that were clearly out of the zone. She was taking those easy ones, and the pitches in the zone she was unloading, and certainly that second one was hammered much more. The first one was in toward the fist a little bit, and she still got out to left field. She's just an incredible hitter. For my quick look on the D1 softball national rankings, national stat rankings, I think she took over the national lead in RBI with the 4 RBI today. So, I mean, that's been impressive that she came in, what, 12 off the pace, I guess. Yeah. And now she's leading the country. She's just, last year, I think she wore down by this point. And this year, she's looking a lot more fresh right now. I don't know what it is exactly.
You mentioned, I mean, that's pretty good. That's bad news for future opponents. That's for sure. If that's that continues that trend. I'm curious about the shortstop position. Stewart's now been kind of the regular now at shortstop. Obviously, for people that don't know, you had Martinez out for the year before the season even started. How would you feel about the shortstop position? Stewart has produced offensively, quietly right there as well, but there's also the defensive aspect. How would you kind of grade that from a Texas standpoint?
Yeah, for the most part, she has done a very good job. What Mike White has said is that they are asking her to make the routine plays. We're not asking her to go over and above and, make the diving stops and the, off balance throws and all of that. And that's kind of just a plus for them. The defense is good enough around her. Mia Scott's very good at third. Leanne Good is an excellent defender at second. That they can manage, and especially with the offense as it is, they can manage with her just making those plays, coming in, scooping up those ground balls left and right a little bit. And she has done very well. Yesterday against Michigan, she made 2 errors, but she didn't really let that affect her. Of course, she hit 2 home runs in that game. And I think overall she's doing very well. I don't see them making a change toward the end of the season at all, unless she just all of a sudden loses it, which at this point I haven't seen any sign of.
Has there been a player that has surprised you this year on a positive end?
Ooh, I probably have to go with, Ashton Maloney. And, she's been a 380 hitter her first 2 years with very good speed, very good slapper, bunter. This year she's had a little pop. I think she has 9 doubles this year, and she came in with 6 for her career. She has 21 RBI, which is a career high. Still hasn't hit one out, which she gets chided by her teammates about. When we were in Ohio in March, she hit one that was like center field that she hit to the wall. Had she pulled it, it would have gone out. And her teammates in the dugout were saying, "Hey, you need to do more push-ups." But Maloney's one of those who has flown under the radar, especially for national awards the past couple of years. And so for her to be adding the pop this year, I think it really makes her much more viable as a potential All-American, which honestly, the way she plays, very good defense, very good arm, batting average over 400, she very well could be.
The thing that always I enjoy watching Texas offense play is you have the power, but you also have the short game, and that's something that Mike White. I've talked to him over the last couple of years about that. That this is the best group he's had from a balancing that standpoint, and I saw him attack UCF early with the short game. Where do you feel the short game is right now with Texas offense?
It's getting better. In that stretch in the SEC. So like the bottom of the lineup, Leanne Good has some pop. Katie Bennett's more of a short game player, batting ninth most games. They were struggling to get on base, and the top of the order was not, they were having their moments. The Maloney, Henry, kind of Mia Scott, they were still getting their hits, but they weren't really stringing them together. And so this weekend looked much more like they are. They're much more locked in and focused on, how do we reach base and putting a good swing on the ball. And I really think the short game is shaping up at the right time, getting to a peak at this point.
Let's talk about the opponents that Texas played this week. And you open with Eastern Illinois, clearly overmatched team there. But
Yeah.
then you get Michigan in the winner's bracket game with a veteran senior in Durkowski
Mhm.
and Aaron Hine, their other pitcher. And then you face UCF, a young team led by Isabella Vega, who's a top 10 freshman national player finalist there. What was your impressions on seeing those teams?
Yeah, coming in, I definitely thought so. I saw someone had run the numbers and like based on average RPI, this was I think it was right about the sixth easiest regional. And hey, number six seed, that lines up, right? But looking at Michigan coming in, having beaten both Oregon and UCLA last weekend in the Big Ten tournament, we know what UCF can do. They took 2 or 3 from Arizona. It definitely felt like it could be a tougher regional, and I think the team probably realized that they weren't overlooking anyone, and so they were able to focus. Yeah, Eastern Illinois had some really good players, and they should be pretty good next year. Michigan was a very young team, other than their ace Durkowski, she's graduating. But for the most part, I think they're bringing back most of their lineup. And UCF, they'll be dangerous for sure with all the talent they have coming back. So I think despite what some people think just based purely on the numbers, I think it was a tougher regional, and it was an impressive job by Texas to roll 2 of the games and then blow out UCF in the third game.
It really felt like it reminded me. You and I talked off the air, but a couple of years ago when Texas was a very young team, still
Mhm.
figuring things out. I think ran into Tennessee in the supers.
Yep.
I feel like the UCFs and the Michigan were kind of in that boat where they're young, and you were the veteran team. Did you sense that? As the game was playing out, that the veteran and the experience that Texas had that UCF didn't have was the difference maker.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and I would assume the Heat yesterday probably played into beating Michigan and getting just piling on basically against them. I would imagine that they wilted a little bit, especially after Texas got up big, which also plays into having experience. I think teams that are more experienced won't let that affect them as much. But certainly Texas was just relentless, and UCF, Michigan, they just couldn't put a stop to it. And so I think that experience was probably a big difference in that those teams having experienced this will likely be better for it next year.
You move on to the super regionals. You'll take on a Clemson team that's very young. John Rittman has done a great job. People wonder what it would look like the post Valerie Cagle era. Got off to a slow start the first 2 weeks of the season, but they've taken off since then, winning the ACC championship. I'm not going to ask you about Clemson per se, but it is funny. I mean, I don't know if the committee is college football fans because this was the pairing in the football playoff
Yeah,
in the same
yeah,
campus, basically. Clemson going to
yeah,
Texas.
yeah.
Kind of your early thoughts here as Texas takes on John Rittman, Mike White. There'll be a lot of talk about those two coaches going head to head.
Right.
Basinger, the transfer pitcher for them. They got good talented players like Moore and company. Should be a fun region, a super regional with two nice brand names that people will be looking at.
Yeah, I admit I haven't looked into Clemson at all. I'll do my prep for the broadcast this week. But certainly they have a reputation. They only started their program, what, I think in the COVID year, right? 2020.
Yeah,
And would I be mistaken to say that they have not made a World Series yet? Have they?
they have not. They've been
Yeah,
close. They've made supers, but not the
yeah,
World
they made
Series.
supers, had Valerie Cagle, obviously. It certainly it feels like one of those teams that with a couple transfer players, and a bunch of young players, they're probably, chomping at the bit. They probably know that Clemson hasn't made it to the World Series, and they've been very close. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they came in here and gave Texas their best shot, and should be a very good super.
Couple things before I let you go. Texas, what is it about being at home? Because clearly there's a difference there. Like I mean, they just seem comfortable there. Is there any? I mean, and obviously the obvious answer is, well, duh, they're home. But there just seems like they just seem like a more confident team, or at least from the outside. Like, what do you picture it? Whereas last year, I thought they were good both home, away, neutral. This year, there seems to be a slight difference. I know they lost the Tennessee series. Listen,
Yeah,
that's Garland Pickens. I don't care where you're playing. That's a tall order.
right,
But
right.
it seems like, other than that, it's been a difference home and away. What have you been able to put your finger on it?
Not really, to be honest. Other than maybe just being tired of the road, we had to spend the 3 out of the 5 non-conference weeks on the road. They were trying to get 3 home series from what I was told, but they couldn't get enough teams to come in. And the road trips have been a little rough for different reasons. Spent the opening weekend playing 2 games in Lafayette, Louisiana, and then we went down to Lamar, played at their house for 2 games against Lamar and a different team, and then we went up to Sam Houston. So 2 hours of driving each day after you finish the games to open the season. That wasn't fun. They were clearly tired by the end of that. Uh, and then having to, went down to Tucson for their second non-conference, and that was pretty good, other than a long delay getting back to Austin from the airport, um, and then having to go up to chilly Columbus, Ohio, in early March and play a non-conference weekend, and then going into a couple of the SEC series on the road, going down to Mississippi State, going up to Missouri, tiny, tiny little, airports you had to fly into. So I would imagine, I think overall, just that travel is probably just wearing on the team. Um, I don't have an explanation for, Oklahoma. We drive up there every year playing
Yeah.
either Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. So I think that was more just some other reasons and just not fully, ready to go. But overall, I think on the road it's been just a lot of tough travel and trying to reset after you get in and try to win those games and focus. At home, I think it's also a unique place here. The walls are 10 feet high; they're a little higher than everywhere else. Um, you have a little bit of a different look in the outfield with some buildings out past left, some bleachers past right. I think it's just a unique place that the players just love being. They love playing.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like I said, the competition on the road has not been easy, so it would make sense. You have some more struggles, and obviously you've played in places you haven't played before too. That probably played a
Yeah,
factor in some of that as
yeah,
well. But hey, you're home for the Supers. That's the
yeah.
important thing before you get to on the road to Oklahoma City. My last question to you, and I asked Mike White this in the postgame, but I'll ask you as well. What are a couple things you think Texas has to do and maybe improve on or get better or do to get back to Oklahoma City?
Yeah. Again, I haven't looked into Clemson, but Tegan Cavan, she was very good today, but she was just a little bit off at times. And so, assuming Clemson's offense is better than UCF's, I would have to imagine that they need Tegan to be her early season self, the Tegan that struck out 18 and 9 innings against Texas Tech and shut down Florida and Tennessee and schools like that. Um, that'll be one of the primary things. Getting started offensively early. A lot of the times recently, when they lost games, they were falling behind by multiple runs in the first couple innings. So I think even though they fell behind in the first 2 games this weekend, they were able to bounce back with huge innings. So I think getting a huge inning early on would be huge. Uh, and then lastly, finding out who your number 2 pitcher is. If you don't win game 1 with Tegan, like I don't know if you go to someone else or if it's just Tegan for game 2, because everyone else has been kind of iffy. The ones that have started have been rocky in starts. The ones that have been relieving have only been relieving recently. And so they haven't really started much. And it would probably take a bit of a mindset shift for them to start and be able to have success.
It'll be interesting. Texas and Clemson, super regionals coming up, and Andrew Haynes will be on the call on the radio side. Tell the audience where they can find you.
Yeah, you can listen to Texas broadcasts either on iHeart, the iHeart app or website. If you search Retro Austin, that's where we'll have all our games. Also, if you go to the TexasLonghorns.com, there's a fans tab at the top and a drop down that says audio streaming, and pull that up when it's game time or 15 minutes before the games when I start my pregame show. I have a pregame interview with Mike White every game. You can listen to there. Twitter/X account is at a baseball junkie. I'll usually post the link to the broadcast before the game's there. And other than that, just retweeting some baseball stuff pretty much. So that's, pretty much it.
Andrew, always a pleasure to talk to you, man. Thanks for doing this. Congrats again. I think Texas has had the upper hand on UCF here the last few times you've been on the show, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Hey, man, good luck this weekend. And again, thanks for always coming on the show. You've been awesome. I always enjoy having you on the show. Good luck this week, and hopefully maybe we'll catch you in OKC there at some point, but if it works out. But in the meantime, thanks for coming on.
All right. Appreciate it, Eric.